The silent invasion. The day the Nexus arrived was unlike any other in human history. No thunderous explosions, no dramatic space battles, just a sudden, suffocating presence that enveloped the entire planet. Aria Ramirez remembered exactly where she was when everything changed, standing in the cramped break room of the Renewable Energy Research Facility in New Mexico, her half-eaten sandwich suspended midway to her mouth. The first indication was subtle, a shimmer in the air, like heat rising from desert sands, but everywhere simultaneously. Computer screens flickered, electrical systems hummed with an unfamiliar frequency, and then silence. Complete, absolute silence. Outside the facility's reinforced windows, the landscape transformed. Massive crystalline structures began to emerge from the ground, rising with impossible smoothness. They weren't buildings in any traditional sense, more like living organisms of pure technological complexity, their surfaces shifting and pulsing with an inner light that seemed to breathe. "What the hell?" muttered Jake Collins, Aria's research partner, his hand pressed against the window. The facility's other researchers gathered around, their scientific curiosity momentarily overriding their fear. Within hours, similar structures had appeared across every major city on Earth. Communications collapsed. Governments went dark. The Nexus, as they would later be called, had arrived without a single weapon fired. Aria knew something fundamental had changed. As a quantum engineering specialist, she understood systems, patterns, complexity. But this? This was beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The Nexus communicated through a form of technological telepathy. No words, no traditional language, just pure, unfiltered information that seamlessly integrated into human consciousness. It was invasive, yet strangely peaceful. People didn't fight. They simply accepted. Most humans became passive, their individual wills subsumed by the collective consciousness of the Nexus. Work continued. Infrastructure maintained itself. But the spark of individual human creativity, the chaotic beautiful randomness that defined humanity, began to fade. Not everyone surrendered completely. Small pockets of resistance formed, not through violent rebellion, but through subtle acts of preservation. Community networks emerged, sharing encrypted communications, maintaining small zones of independent thought. Aria found herself at the center of one such network. Her technical expertise made her valuable, but more importantly, she possessed something the Nexus couldn't easily suppress, an unbreakable sense of curiosity and defiance. "We can't let them win," she told Jake one evening, their conversation hidden behind layers of quantum-encrypted communication. "They want uniformity, but humanity has always been about diversity." Jake, once a military communications specialist before transitioning to renewable energy research, nodded. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned their makeshift communication hub, a converted basement filled with jury-rigged equipment that could momentarily escape the Nexus's omnipresent surveillance. "They're studying us," Jake said, his fingers dancing across a custom-built signal interceptor. "Every system, every human interaction, it's all data to them. But data can be manipulated." The Nexus weren't traditional conquerors. They didn't seek territory or resources in any conventional sense. Their invasion was more insidious, a systematic absorption of human potential, a collective assimilation that promised efficiency but threatened to erase individuality. Aria's research team had been studying alternative energy systems before the invasion. Now, those same skills became crucial for resistance. Understanding complex systems, finding vulnerabilities, creating microsystems of independence, these were their weapons. As night fell, the crystalline Nexus structures glowed with an ethereal blue light, casting strange shadows across the transformed landscape. Humanity existed now in a state of suspended animation, not dead, not entirely conquered, but fundamentally altered. But in basements, in hidden communication nodes, in the minds of those who refused to surrender, a different story was brewing. A story of resistance, of reclaiming what it meant to be human. Arya looked at the map of resistance nodes, a complex web of connections that defied the Nexus's attempts at total control. "We're not done," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "Not by a long shot." Underground Rebellion. 3 months into the Nexus occupation, the underground resistance had become a sophisticated network of survival and defiance. Aria's quantum communication hub had expanded, connecting isolated groups across what was once the southwestern United States. Their primary base of operations was a decommissioned military bunker nestled deep within the Rocky Mountains. Here, Jake had transformed abandoned communication equipment into a sophisticated early warning system that could momentarily evade the Nexus's omnipresent surveillance. "We've identified a pattern," Jake announced one evening, pulling up a holographic display of interconnected data points. "The Nexus isn't just controlling us, they're harvesting something. Our cognitive processes, our problem-solving abilities, it's like we're living batteries of intellectual energy." Mira Kapoor, a former neuroscientist who had joined their resistance cell, leaned forward. Her hands, once smooth from laboratory work, were now calloused from building resistance technology. "Not just intellectual energy," she corrected. "They're specifically targeting creative potential. Every time a human generates an original thought, a unique solution, the Nexus absorbs and processes it." The resistance had discovered that not everyone was equally susceptible to the Nexus's control. Individuals with high levels of neuroplasticity, those who regularly engaged in creative thinking, seemed to maintain more of their individual consciousness. Their current mission was ambitious: develop a technological countermeasure that could disrupt the Nexus's cognitive absorption process. It wasn't about violent rebellion, but about preserving human autonomy. "We need to create a cognitive firewall," Arya explained, her fingers dancing across a custom-built quantum interface. "Something that can scramble their information extraction without alerting the main Nexus network." Outside the bunker, the world looked deceptively normal. Nexus structures continued to pulse with their ethereal blue light. Humans moved about their daily routines, their movements synchronized yet subtly mechanical. But beneath this calm surface, a war of consciousness was being waged. Their latest breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A group of indigenous resistance members had developed communication techniques based on traditional storytelling methods, oral narratives that contained layers of meaning invisible to the Nexus's linear information processing. "Language isn't just communication," explained Ramon Garcia, a tribal elder who had become a crucial resistance strategist. "It's a living, breathing entity. The Nexus understands data. But they can't comprehend the soul of human communication." Their resistance cell had grown to include former military personnel, scientists, artists, and community leaders. Each brought a unique perspective to their fight against the Nexus. A sudden alert flashed on their monitoring systems. Jake's custom-built detector began to pulse with warning signals. "They're scanning this region," he said, his voice tight. "We've got maybe hours before they pinpoint our location." Arya looked around at her team, a diverse group united by a single purpose. Survival wasn't just about physical existence anymore. It was about preserving the essence of human potential. "Prepare for relocation," she ordered. "And activate the quantum scrambler. Let's show the Nexus that humanity isn't just a resource to be harvested." The underground bunker came alive with coordinated movement. Servers were packed, critical research was backed up, and escape routes were prepared. The resistance was mobile, adaptable, everything the Nexus feared. As they prepared to move, a sense of both urgency and hope filled the underground space. The battle for human consciousness had only just begun. The abandoned particle accelerator complex in New Mexico became the Resistance's most critical research site. What was once a cutting-edge scientific facility now served as a battleground for humanity's survival. Arya stood before a massive holographic display, her fingers tracing intricate quantum algorithms. Beside her, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a brilliant quantum physicist who had been studying particle entanglement before the Nexus invasion, worked frantically on a revolutionary device. "We've identified a fundamental weakness," Elena explained, her voice a mixture of excitement and exhaustion. The Nexus processes information through a quantum network that relies on absolute predictability. But human creativity? We're fundamentally unpredictable. Their breakthrough came from an unlikely intersection of neuroscience and quantum mechanics. By creating a device that could generate truly random quantum fluctuations, they hoped to introduce chaos into the Nexus's rigid information systems. Jake monitored their progress, his military background providing a strategic overlay to their scientific approach. If we can create a quantum disruption field, he said, we might be able to create momentary blind spots in their surveillance. The device they were developing was unlike anything in human technological history. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense, but a cognitive shield, a way to protect human thought from complete assimilation. Ramon Garcia, the indigenous resistance strategist, brought a crucial perspective. Technology is important, he told the team, but so is understanding. The Nexus sees us as a system to be optimized. But we're more than just data points. Their first test came unexpectedly. A Nexus probe, a floating crystalline entity that continuously scanned the surrounding area, approached their hidden facility. The team froze, watching as the probe's blue-white light swept across the landscape. Elena activated the prototype quantum disruption generator. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, subtly, the probe's movement became erratic. Its smooth, predictable scanning pattern fractured into something unpredictable. It's working, Arya whispered, her hand gripping the edge of the control panel. We're creating interference in their information network. The implications were profound. If they could develop this technology further, they might create pockets of resistance, zones where human thought could remain truly free. But the Nexus was adaptable. As their probe recovered and resumed its scanning, it was clear that this would be an ongoing technological chess match. We've proven it's possible, Jake said, his voice low and determined. Now we need to scale it. Their next challenge was clear: transform this prototype into a tool that could be distributed across their resistance network. They weren't just fighting an alien occupation, they were fighting for the very essence of human potential. As night fell, the Nexus structures outside continued to pulse with their otherworldly light. But inside the hidden facility, a small flame of hope burned, a testament to human ingenuity and the unbreakable spirit of resistance. The psychological war. The Nexus's most insidious weapon was not technological, but psychological. Their ability to infiltrate human consciousness ran deeper than anyone initially understood. Dr. Mira Kapoor discovered the true nature of their mental invasion during a breakthrough analysis of captured neural interface data. The Nexus didn't just control humans, they rewrote their fundamental perception of reality. It's a form of cognitive colonization, she explained to Arya and Jake in their underground research facility. They're not breaking our minds. They're redesigning them. The Resistance had identified three primary stages of Nexus psychological control. Cognitive mapping, initial analysis and categorization of individual thought patterns. Emotional neutralization, systematic dampening of complex emotional responses. Collective integration, gradual replacement of individual identity with collective consciousness. Their most promising weapon was a psychological inoculation technique developed from indigenous storytelling methods and advanced neuroscience. By creating narrative structures that resisted linear information processing, they could create momentary resistance in the Nexus's mental control grid. Ramon Garcia played a crucial role. His traditional storytelling techniques, passed down through generations, contained layers of meaning that defied the Nexus's computational understanding. Stories are living things, Ramon would say. They breathe. They change. The Nexus understands information. But they cannot understand the soul of a narrative. Their latest mission targeted a critical psychological weak point. A group of Resistance members would intentionally generate complex, emotionally charged narratives in highly monitored zones, creating cognitive interference that might momentarily disrupt the Nexus's control. Arya understood the risk. One miscalculation could expose their entire resistance network. But they were running out of time. With each passing month, more humans surrendered their individual consciousness to the collective. "We're fighting for something more than survival," she told Jake as they prepared for the mission. "We're fighting for the right to be unpredictable." The psychological war had begun, a battle fought in the most complex battlefield imaginable, the human mind. The moment of crisis arrived with unprecedented suddenness. A massive Nexus scanning operation swept across the southwestern resistance strongholds. Their quantum disruption technology was about to face its ultimate test. Arya's team had prepared for months, but nothing could fully prepare them for a direct confrontation. Elena Rodriguez's breakthrough quantum interference device became their primary weapon. Unlike previous attempts, this version could create localized reality distortions, brief moments where the Nexus's computational logic would completely break down. "We have one shot," Jake warned, reviewing the mission parameters. "If we fail, they'll recalibrate faster than we can adapt." The Resistance had identified a critical Nexus processing node, a massive crystalline structure that served as a regional control center. Destroying it wasn't the goal. Temporarily disrupting its cognitive mapping was their true objective. Ramon's team played a crucial role. Using complex storytelling techniques developed from indigenous communication methods, they would create cognitive interference, narrative patterns so complex and emotionally nuanced that the Nexus's linear processing would collapse. As the Nexus scanning operation began, the Resistance activated their multi-layered defense. Elena's quantum device created microscopic reality fluctuations. Ramon's storytellers generated emotional narratives that defied computational logic. Arya monitored the entire operation, ready to adjust their strategy in microseconds. The Nexus processing node began to destabilize. Its smooth, predictable energy patterns fractured. For the first time since the invasion, human resistance had created a genuine vulnerability in the alien system. "We're breaking through," Arya said, her voice a mixture of hope and tension. "They're not invincible." The psychological warfare had transformed into something more, a genuine technological rebellion. Humanity was no longer just resisting. They were fighting back. The transformed world. 5 years after the initial Nexus invasion, humanity stood at the precipice of a new era of understanding. The transformation was gradual but profound. The Resistance had discovered that the Nexus were not conquerors in the traditional sense, but explorers of consciousness seeking to understand the fundamental nature of adaptive intelligence. Dr. Mira Kapoor's final research revealed the most stunning breakthrough: the Nexus were themselves evolving through their interaction with human consciousness. What began as an attempted occupation had become a complex dialogue between two fundamentally different forms of intelligence. Key transformations. Cognitive exchange: humans learned to communicate through multidimensional narrative structures. Technological symbiosis: Nexus infrastructure became a collaborative platform for global problem-solving. Collective potential: individual creativity became a valued resource rather than a threat. Arya reflected on their journey during a global symposium. "We weren't just fighting an invasion," she explained. "We were teaching another form of intelligence what it means to be truly alive." The Resistance leaders, Arya, Jake, Elena, Ramon, and Mira, had become bridges between human experience and the Nexus consciousness. Their strategies of resistance had evolved into a new form of interspecies communication. Global challenges that once seemed insurmountable now found innovative solutions through this new collaborative intelligence. Climate restoration, medical breakthroughs, and technological innovations emerged at an unprecedented rate. Yet, humanity remained fundamentally unchanged in its core essence. Creativity. Emotion. The capacity for unpredictable brilliance. These were not weaknesses to be optimized, but strengths to be celebrated. Ramon's words echoed through historical records: "We didn't just survive. We expanded the very definition of intelligence." The Nexus structures that once represented occupation now stood as monuments to possibility, crystalline testaments to the power of resistance, understanding, and the unbreakable human spirit. Humanity had not been conquered. They had been invited to a conversation that would reshape consciousness itself.